Hello, Cape Cod, and welcome to Life with Gwenn. This is a new show from the Cape Cod Times, and we'll be meeting with you any Wednesday that you're free at high noon for a little coffee clatch. My name is Gwenn Friss. I didn't name this show, by the way. My name is Gwenn Friss, and I cover a lot of feature subjects for the Cape Cod Times, including food, dining, lifestyle, and books, and part of doing that is I get to meet wonderful people. The neighbors are amazing, I guess anywhere, but especially here on the peninsula and in the islands. And we are fortunate now through this beautiful studio that the Cape Cod Times producers have built and this technology, this Facebook Live, so that we can bring some of those guests to you. And you can interact with us. You can send us some questions. You can let us know what's on your mind. You can send us suggestions for shows. But today we're kicking it off, and we're very lucky to have with us our very first guest, Cape Cod Synagogue Rabbi David Freelund, who is coming to us during a very busy time because last night at sundown, we had the beginning of Hanukkah.
Yes, we did. It's off to a big start already. We got a tremendous gift in Alabama. I know Jews all across the country are very happy.
So we are, I told you when we spoke that I'm from an interfaith family.
Yes. So
I spent a lot of time in temple and also outside of temple waiting for Hebrew school to get out, that kind of thing, one of those parents. In over 30 years, I've accumulated most of the prayer. But people come to me and I always feel inadequate because I really don't have all of the answers. And there is still a persistent sense that, Hanukkah is the Jewish Christmas because of, I know, I just like wince, but because of when they tend to fall. So can you talk a little bit about the history of what the Festival of Lights actually is?
Absolutely. Well, I don't pretend to have all of the answers. Either I will do my best to provide some of them. Of course, the confluence and timing of Hanukkah and Christmas, when they're usually around the same time of year, has promoted this idea of Hanukkah being the Jewish Christmas, when in fact the holidays are totally unrelated and one precedes the other by a few centuries. So Hanukkah begins really with a story of oppression, revolution, and military victory. To understand the origins of this, we need to know a little bit about the ancient world. Alexander the Great, some of you may have heard of him before.
It's a half hour.
Yes,
okay.
Indeed, I know. Well, yeah, he had a brother. He was Alexander the Not So Great. He didn't really make it into the books. So Alexander the Great conquered the known world, but left no heir, and he died young. His generals took over his different territories and proclaimed their own kingdoms. So around the area that we would know as Syria today, you had Seleucus was one general who founded the Seleucid dynasty, and in Egypt you had Ptolemy. Spelled with a silent P in front, just like pool. And it led to the Ptolemaic dynasty. And what happened is that the territory that we would know as Israel today was a ping pong ball back and forth between them. These empires waxed and waned. They went to war against each other to try and build their strength.
Sounds sort of familiar,
Doesn't it? Yeah. So the more
for a very long time.
The more the story changes, the more it stays the same. Exactly. The constantly moving borders of the Middle East. So after one of these battles, the Syrian Greek Seleucid king Antiochus IV lost, and on the way back home decided to comfort himself by subjugating the Jews of Israel to his rule. Now, they were already under the empire of the Greeks, but he decided to break the rules of what Hellenism had been in Alexander's time.
Even though he lost.
Right, and enforce, exactly.
Oh,
and instead, chutzpahdik indeed, we say, right, filled with nerve. And so he decided to enforce all kinds of things to break Jewish culture and religion. He desecrated the temple in Jerusalem. This is the Second Temple. He erected a statue of Zeus in there in direct contravention to every Jewish principle. They slaughtered pigs in the sacred precincts. And beyond this, they insisted that the locals do likewise and toe the line with Greek religion and culture. What happened, of course, is what happens in most parts of history, which is the vast majority of people go along with it. But there was a small core that refused to, led by a man named Mattatyahu, who's referred to as Mattathias in the Greek, who he and his sons led a revolution and refused to give in. They refused to assimilate to the Greek way of life. They refused to give up on Jewish faith and Jewish history.
Are these the Maccabees?
These are the Maccabees. And one of his sons was Judah, who became known as the Maccabee. And there's a lot of stories for why the origin of that name. Sometimes he's called Judah the Hammer, like Charles Martel in medieval history, the hammer. And perhaps also because of their rallying cry, Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, the first letters of which make up Maccabee, who was like you, O God. And so that they would cry when going out into battle. They started a guerrilla insurgency against overwhelming forces. The Greeks at the time had the super weapon, the elephant. The Jews did not. But they figured out a series of tactics to neutralize that. And after 2 years of fighting, overcame the Greeks, recaptured the temple and the sacred precincts, cleansed it, and rededicated it. When they got there, they found that there was not enough of the sanctified olive oil that was burned in the Ner Tamid, the eternal lamp that was lit at all times in the temple, to last more than a day. And it was going to take them time to create more of the soil, to press it and purify it. Yet that one vial of oil lasted for 8 days. And so we continue to this day to celebrate the 8 days of Hanukkah in memory of that miracle of ancient times, manyfold. The miracle of the defeat of the many by the few, of the strong by the weak, and the Jewish people refusing to give in. The story of the miracle itself is the only mention that we have in Jewish scripture any place in the Talmud. The basic story of the war is not even in the Jewish Bible.
Yeah, it's interesting because even after all these years, it pretty much picks up for me at the point where the Maccabees win. And I think a lot of people know the story that way, this is a much more fascinating and contextual version. So I thank you so much for that. But as we were talking about marking this every year, you had brought one thing for us to show. I'm going to bring this up to the camera a little bit. And this is one of probably an endless number of designs of menorahs. Most people have seen these. But I'm going to give you the candles because I have a question for you.
Okay.
Why don't you put in the shamas, the center candle?
Yeah, the helper candle there. Yeah, the shamash. Yeah.
Yeah, I hit it right.
You did.
So anyway, the shamas, and then what I'm curious about is it right to left on adding the candles, or left to right? Because this is always a question, even within my family.
So, in fact, the Talmud addresses this in that very same section that mentions the miracle of the oil when the Maccabees won the war against the Greeks. And there's a debate as to whether you should start off with 8 candles and work your way down to 1, start off with 1 candle and work your way up to 8. The Talmud actually says that you are fulfilling the mitzvah, the religious obligation of Hanukkah, if you light 1 candle each night.
Oh, good.
So if you light 1 candle each night, you're good. So what we do, though, in order to address your problems, that we add to holiness. This is what the Talmud decides with Rabbi Hillel. So we start with 1 and we work our way up. So what we'll do, I always tell people, is that you add them in, load the menorah in Hebrew, and light them in English. So you load them from right to left and light them from left to right. So you always light the candle for that night first, because that's the one that actually counts. The other ones are just to beautify the occasion.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what. If you could get a few candles out, we are not going to actually light them for 2 reasons. One is that we wouldn't do that during the daylight, because this is done at dusk. And
the fire marshal is probably the other one, right?
That's the other one.
Yeah.
And just the fact that I don't think that the crew that built the studio would like me very much if on its pilot voyage we burned it down.
Really? I understand that this equipment is not even flammable. Do you want to check?
No.
Oh, all right. Okay. So we would load, as I said, you're going to load them. So this would be for the first night. This is for the second night.
Okay.
So, and that's the shamash. So
and the
you would
colors
light
matter or don't matter?
Just for decoration. Okay. That's all. They come in all different colors. You can get hand dipped candles, all kinds of things.
All right. And now there is a blessing.
There is.
And would it be sacrilege at all if we share that blessing?
No, it would not. There are actually two blessings that we sing. The first one is for the lighting of the candles, and the second one is to praise God for the miracles done in seasons past at this time, remembering the miracle of Hanukkah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kirshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Chanukah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, she'asa nisim lavoteinu bayamim hahem bazman hazeh. When we do that, we would have already lit the shamash, the user candle, and with that one, we would light the second candle and then the first for the night. We don't use the existing candles to light anything else, to read by.
Right.
They are simply to proclaim the miracle of Hanukkah. So ideally, you would have the...
To show the light.
To show the light. Ideally, you would have the menorah outside your front door because it's supposed to display to the neighborhood.
Right. And I was going to join you in the prayer until I heard what a good voice you had. And I thought, you take it from here. At home, the kids think it's very funny to sing along and then they'll stop. So I have to make sure I know the Hebrew to keep going, which seems a little unfair. But
that seems more than a little unfair.
They both, had their bar and bat mitzvah.
Of course.
And she teaches Hebrew school. So, I think it's a little unfair. But I didn't think you'd do that. But, you have a lovely voice.
Thank you.
I thought you could handle that.
I can do some light Led Zeppelin classics to follow up if you like. No?
Well, I think we have some more Hanukkah stuff to talk about.
There we go.
We were going to talk a little bit, I think, about the idea. Let me start by telling you that when my kids were little, I ended up giving a Hanukkah party. My husband did not get home from work. So here I was, the non-Jewish mom, giving the Hanukkah party. But I was more Jewish in culture and in supporting my family that we were members over at Falmouth Jewish Congregation. And then the rest of the neighborhood. So I was fine. And I had gotten a little present for each of the children who attended. And they thought my kids were absolutely fantastically lucky because they had not one Christmas, but they had 8 nights of presents. They didn't quite understand that there might be 1 or 2 big presents in there, but the rest were small ones. And we tried to devote one night to giving,
Very nice.
to the Heifer Project or something like that, because I wanted them to develop that sense of, I think it's Tikkun Olam. Is that right?
Tikkun Olam, literally repairing the world.
Yes.
So there's a Jewish mystical tradition that when the world was created, it didn't go quite according to plan. And so it's up to human beings to work in partnership with God to repair it.
I like that. I didn't know that that much about it, but I've always liked the fact that doing a mitzvah, a good deed, is a part of many of the traditions that the community shares together. Yeah. In not just in Jewish communities, in communities all over, But I wanted to see if you could tell me a little bit about the idea of the presents, because I'd read that's only a thing here.
Well, I mean, it's grown and been amplified in the States, absolutely. Religious traditions borrow from each other all the time. There are tunes that go back and forth between church and synagogue and have for centuries. That when we live with our neighbors, we pick up on their ways. And so part of it is that in the States, Jewish families didn't want their kids to feel like they were missing out. And frankly, the American Christmas is the one that emphasized gift giving over all else, too. Right. That was a very American.
During a big immigrant push, like, are we talking the 1800s or so, New York City?
Vast majority of Jews arrived in this country from 1890 to 1920.
Mm-hmm. So that's pretty much in my mind where we're at, and that was when this idea of having a little gift for Hanukkah starts to develop?
It starts to develop, absolutely. That prior, it was about lighting the candles. You would have games with the children, small gifts for the children, really focused more on the children because of the fun of lighting the candles. And because it was a holiday, kids would be excused from studying that night and could play games instead.
Dreidel.
Exactly. We've got a few of those lying around.
So, show one of those.
I can. I'm going to stick with the gift giving for a minute, and then I'll get over to the dreidel. So the gift giving, it grew here in America. And I say irony of ironies is that most of the department stores that we know were actually founded by German Jewish immigrants. So that the push for gift giving actually may in fact have originated with those same people that were trying to move stock at the end of the year.
Cut its own throat here.
Exactly. So maybe exactly. But yes, that push for it. Yeah, we look at it's so funny because having grown up in New York myself, and all of the department stores, they all had Jewish names because that's who started them in the 19th century, going back to the 1840s and 1850s when you had the first significant wave of German Jewish immigration. Same time, other Germans were coming to this country as well.
So my husband shared similar background to you, and he did draw the idea at the line at cards, and he was like, I don't care about the tree. In fact, he liked the tree. But he said, I'm like, we don't do cards. When did my mother start doing Hanukkah cards? He said, it's the Christians that have gotten into the family.
Well, Hallmark, it's a good business. It's a very good business.
And as you said, some of the merchants themselves. So we're pushing that because it was a way to add a lot of business.
Absolutely. And, frankly, it makes the holiday a happier time for everybody when they receive the gifts. So it's not so bad. And so we do tend to emphasize that for children more. Adults, not so much for gift exchange.
Right.
Hanukkah.
So, yes, if you're out there and you're an adult, you're expecting a gift for Hanukkah, probably not going to happen. I do have to say, why don't you show us the dreidel? Because then let's talk food.
Sure, absolutely. So I've got a few dreidels here.
People will be able to see. Can you possibly do a dreidel on there?
I can do it right here. They're going to see it right out here.
No,
actually.
They're not. There's a bar there.
Oh.
So you need to get it.
I can see myself right here. I bet you I'm going to be able to do it right here. I don't think I could do it on that surface. Okay. So
we'll give it a try.
I think I see it already. There it is. Yeah. I can see it on screen. So the dreidel, which is a Yiddish word for a top. Drayin in Yiddish is to spin or turn. Has 4 letters on it. The nun, the gimel, the hey, and the shin. I know you can't really see that too well. Absolutely. And they stand for a few things. They stand for the rules of the game. So nun, nicht, nothing happens. Gimel, or ganz, you get everything. Hey, or halb, you get half of the pot. And shin, or stellen, you have to stick one in. So you sit in a circle of people and you ante up at the beginning. You could play with peanuts, you could play with raisins, you could play with chocolate coins. Geld literally means just money. Yeah, that's exactly it, right? That's right. That's it. So chocolate coins, or anything else you wanted to gamble with. This is low stakes gambling. They have not adopted the high stakes VIP dreidel room in Vegas yet, much to my objections. So what you do is you take a spin. So the letters also stand for Nes Gadol Haya Sham, which means a great miracle happened there. So it's to remind us of the miracle of Hanukkah. So you just give it a good spin. And if you're like me and you've got some stupid dreidel tricks in you can go upside down, or any of the other good things that you can do. I always wanted a David Letterman segment for upside down. Stupid dreidel tricks, right?
We'll work on this. We'll get you a little platform.
Exactly.
But dreidel is a wonderful game. We hosted the Martha's Vineyard temple one time. We used to go back and forth on Hanukkah parties. And
it's a tough drive, isn't it? Yeah.
Don't tell people about that bridge. But anyway, there was the kids. We made dreidels with the kids, and this was the ultimate in economy. If you do this on a clean surface, what you do is you take a candy kiss and a little bit of frosting, marshmallow, and a pretzel stick, and they actually will spin. If everything's working that night, it will spin, and at the end
you can eat them, huh?
You can eat
That's
them.
Pretty good. Yeah.
Yes. Wow. So something to keep in mind. And speaking of eating and
Yes.
cooking,
Yes.
we had some great conversation about the fact that you came here after doing what? Tell me, pick up the story.
All right. So my rabbinic career followed being a line cook for about a year and a half. So I
On the Cape?
No. I was down in Charlottesville, Virginia, actually. I went to school. It's where I met my wife. And I worked in a place down there called Northern Exposure, to say hi to Stewie and Dale if you're watching. Worked there for about a year and a half, sort of cut my teeth on the line, and decided I'd rather go to rabbinical school than culinary school. And so I progressed from there. But the bug never left me. I still love to cook. If I have a day off, nothing makes me happier than spending the whole day in the kitchen. So that's still with me. I've got a lot of different toys. So for Hanukkah at the Cape Cod Synagogue, I actually prepare the brisket for our Shabbat Hanukkah meal. So we have a family meal that will seat about 150 people this Friday night. And I have a relationship with a wholesaler, so I drive back from Boston with a lot of meat in my car. So I'm cooking off about 75 pounds of brisket for Friday night.
And I'm thinking that you don't want to get stopped on the way home, because how are you going to explain that?
Well, exactly, especially if there's an APB out for a missing person. Oh my God, what did they do to you? Oh, that'd be terrible. Yeah, exactly. Cryovac and boneless. How did that happen? Yeah. Just call me Hannibal. All right.
Oh, my goodness.
Sorry.
That's okay. We
That's
like
fine.
funny people. I also, before we moved on to food, I wanted to ask you, I dressed special for today. I'm wearing the blue and the silver and white.
I see that.
And my daughter did my makeup. And I'm actually relieved because she's 24, and she got for the first night of Hanukkah, she got a palette of very bright colors. So at one point this morning when I was hurrying out of the house, she stepped back and said, "Oh, I hope I haven't gone too far." And all I could think of was Mimi, that character from the old Drew Carey show.
Yes.
But I think she did a good job, And you said that the colors are pretty much just marketing?
Well, the blue and white, the blue and white have been taken on as sort of Jewish colors because of the flag of Israel and because of the ancient significance of blue on the talit, which was a religious garment that's worn. The patil techelet, or a blue thread that goes with it. And so we've taken on blue. You'll see it on the flag of Israel, which is also reminiscent of that same talit with the blue stripes. And so blue is commonly used for Jews. And, if you've got red and green already going for Christmas, blue and silver looks pretty good, so.
And how are we doing on time? Oh, I don't know if we have time, but next time you come, you have to tell the whole shell story.
Oh, I
Tell
can.
it quickly.
Yeah, sure. So that the source of that original blue dye, scholars had looked for a long time, and they finally figured out there was a snail along the eastern Mediterranean, along the Israeli coast, that when harvested at the right time of day yielded a blue dye. And so they've actually isolated the source of the dye.
That's got a pretty good grounding there.
For centuries, you couldn't buy the blue because nobody knew what it was. And now you can again.
Absolutely. And I have to tell you that when people ask me, what should I bring to Passover if they get invited to Passover Seder, I say flowers, because there are so many dietary rules.
Yeah, Passover's a little tougher. Yeah.
We go the other way. This is the holiday that says, go ahead, have some.
The more oily, the better. It's all about fried food.
It.
It's all about fried food for the week of Hanukkah. So because of the miracle of the oil, we also have foods cooked in oil. So Jews all around the world have different foods that they'll cook. There's one thing, they're all fried. So whether you like fried chicken, you like donuts, you like potato latkes, if you can deep fry it, it's appropriate for the holiday.
Well, bingo. That's the potato latkes. My daughter's making them for her boyfriend, who has not had them yet, and tonight. And
sour cream or applesauce, the old question, huh?
Yeah. We end up using neither, but both are usually on hand.
I like salt and gravy on mine if I'm having them with meat. They're delicious.
Gravy?
Oh, God, yeah. When that brisket juices drip all over them, it's fantastic.
Yeah. So
yeah.
Now I heard that you have a special latke recipe.
Well, I'm just very meticulous about the way I make them. How about that?
Oh, so are you not going to share the latke recipe?
Well, it's not that hard.
We can keep you here in the studio.
Yes, all right, exactly. I'm actually
latke.
chained in place right now. This is My ankle chains don't show up on camera. They're below the desk. So it basically, the key is to start with the starchy potatoes. So you need to russet. You need to shred them, and you need to squeeze the life out of them to get the water out of them first. And you can collect that water, let it settle, and then pour it off, and you'll have potato starch at the bottom, which will help bind them. Mm-hmm. Grated onion and egg and salt, and that's about it.
Yes.
And it works very, very well.
Cheese yesterday, I nearly fell over.
There's no cheese in a latke. If that doesn't say more about America than anything else, I don't know what does. Every dish in America, you should throw some cheese on it. Right? Yeah. Everything. Yeah, we're the country that bought stuffed crust pizza. Why? Yeah, it's always more cheese.
Because they could.
Because we could, exactly. So no cheese on a latke.
In work.
Absolutely. And actually, you asked what you could bring for Hanukkah. A bowl of Lipitor would probably be a good idea.
No, but I think that from what I've heard of the teachings is that, yes, this is the holiday where we indulge in the fried foods, but in moderation, because life is lived well in moderation. And
absolutely. And a lot of the traditional Jewish diet is actually not meat-based. Right. Meat traditionally was saved for special occasions.
Yeah, so, actually,
Shabbat and holidays.
We're not really talking about meat for this holiday.
No.
Oh, and you know what we haven't mentioned? 8 nights.
8 nights. That's right. So we're just tonight would be the second night. We're in the first day. Jewish days start at sundown, so they run from sundown to sunset. Is the Jewish cycle. So we started last night, and we're in the midst of the first day, and we'll start the second day at sundown tonight. So for 8 full days, we celebrate Hanukkah.
Okay, and one more question, because we're running out of time, but why is it a different time each year?
Well, it's actually the same time every year. It's on the 25th of Kislev. It's the first night of Hanukkah every single time. But you may not recognize that month on your calendar. The Jewish calendar is a lunar solar calendar. So the months are based on lunar cycles with some adjustments to make it run against the solar year properly. So periodically we have to add an extra month or a day or two to certain months in order to get it to line up with the seasons properly. So the holidays can move a little bit. Hanukkah, you might remember a few years ago, was actually on Thanksgiving.
That was unusual.
Very unusual for it to come that early. Sometimes it starts after Christmas. Mm-hmm. So it has that much of a range.
Believe me, when you're in an interfaith family, you start the year by marking your calendar all the high Jewish holidays that you're going to be in temple for first, and then
absolutely right.
Things.
So in contrast to say with the Muslim calendar, which is a purely lunar calendar, just precesses around the solar year, so their holidays move season to season.
Thank you so much for coming.
Oh, you're so welcome.
Give us
really my pleasure.
Me and you. But don't forget, guys, you can watch this on our Facebook page. Go to the live video section. You can also just come and visit either this set or Jason Kolnos's time at the beach. If you ever get discouraged of winter and you need a little break, Cape Cod Times is here. Join us next week. We're not telling you what's going to be on. We have a message. So isn't this wonderful? We have a message from Felipe Pereira who says, Happy Hanukkah from Brazil. Happy Hanukkah to you as well. So wonderful to know we're out there with you in the world. Join us next week for Life with Gwenn.